Welcome to you again on the first pre-recorded version of Capital Report. It is coming to you live though on Tuesday, April 21st. The reason that we're pre-recording this is that I will be traveling to Los Angeles for an event that is being held in the Nixon Foundation. Nixon Foundation has been established since the President Nixon passed away. And because President Nixon had a very good relationship with the Shah of Iran, with the former Shah of Iran, and they were very good friends and allies. President Nixon was the only American president, former president, who attended Shah of Iran's funeral in Cairo in 1981. And because of that, this eternal bond between the Pahlavis and the Nixons were forged. Since then, the Nixon Foundation is annually hosting an event celebrating the friendship between the Shah of Iran and President Nixon. They play some of the videos of their meetings. Twice, the Shah of Iran traveled to Washington, D.C. during President Nixon's time. Many times, President Nixon traveled to Iran in different capacities. When he was a vice president, he traveled to Iran a few times. And then after that, when he became president, he traveled to Iran. So I will be in Los Angeles. This event will be held in Orange County, close to Los Angeles. That is why we're pre-recording this event for you. As you can see, just to give you a footnote of what's happening in Los Angeles, is that I'm expecting to see a lot of former American presidents' families. Last year I was there. It was held in Washington, D.C., and the former Queen of Iran, Pahlavi, she attended, and she was so kind, and we spoke very briefly. Somebody introduced me to her and said, Arash, she's a reporter at the Congress. I think what she heard was that I work at the Congress. Maybe she thought I'm an important person. So she was very kind and nice. And then I learned that, well, she's kind and nice to everyone. I thought it's because I'm important. But anyhow, joking aside, this year, it's being held in Nixon Foundation in Orange County. Princess Noor is expected to open up the ceremony with remarks. One of the daughters of the Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, his daughter, Noor, will be opening up the event. I will be there covering this historic event, this ceremony. I expect some of the former president's family members also to be there. Last year, President Eisenhower's grandson was there. I think President Gerald Ford's nephew was there. A few of former presidents in the United States who have had very good relationship with the Pahlavis. They're going to be there. A lot of news, a lot of coverage. So that's why we're pre-recording this. Moving on to the subject, oil shock, part 2. Now, besides the oil shock, how the U.S. government has been planning for this oil shock for many, many years. We talked about in oil shock number 1, how the U.S. has had contingency plans for at least 50 years if and when the Strait of Hormuz is choked. And then we talked about it looks too good to be true because many of these tankers around the world, in order to get more oil, they're coming to the Gulf of America. Gulf of America usually at this time of year hosts nearly 110 tankers. Right now, you can count up to 190, and 110 more are inbound. So best time for the U.S. to sell more oil because the Strait of Hormuz is choked, and it's not going to be opened up anytime soon. By the time that I'm recording this for you on Tuesday, 21st, the ceasefire should have expired. And by the expiration of ceasefire, I expect the hostilities to resume. Once the hostilities resume, the oil would spike even more. The shortage of jet fuel in Europe is being felt right now. I explained to you in the last video that the European flights to countries like Australia, which is the furthest from Europe. Many of them are being delayed and canceled because European countries do not have enough jet fuel to reach to Australia anymore. And the realities of the markets are, sinking in. They just, the Europeans are understanding that the cheap Iranian oil that they used to get with a lot of discount, their looting of the Middle East has ended. And now the Middle East is actually looting Europe. It has reversed. We talked about all of those. Now, in this video, we're going to focus more about some of the byproducts of this conflict, some of the byproducts of the natural resources, near oil, LNG, like the helium gas. And what is the usage for helium gas anyways? I didn't know. I never knew until I read this article. Apparently, more than 80% of the world's helium consumption is being provided from Qatar. 80% is being provided by Qatar alone. What do we need helium for? A lot of CT scan equipment use helium, as you can see in the picture right here. That's a CT scan equipment. They use helium for whatever reason, and that gas needs to be pumped in every now and then. They have to get a new tank of helium to be able to sustain their operation. So if the helium runs out, the whole world is going to face a catastrophe. Now, another piece of news in this article is that not so long ago, the United States has basically given away the rights for use of a bunch of helium reserves in the United States to foreign companies. Now, if that's the case, maybe the US government can reverse that. There's nothing the US governments cannot back off of. I won't be surprised if they back out of this because of the national security issues. The ramification of a loss of helium gas. And who knows, we still use helium gas in the world. This article said the US just sold its helium stockpile. And it talks about how the United States has inadvertently sold the whole stockpile that they had of helium. And they're going to actually, one of the countries that's going to run out of helium fastest is here in the United States. We run out of helium. Most of the operations of MRI companies who run MRI and MRI scans and CT scans, is going to be affected. A lot of companies will be affected. Tech companies will be affected. I never knew, but helium still is such a hot commodity. So is byproducts of gas like LNG, liquid natural gas. Now, if you look at the United States map from the sky, from the satellite at night, you look at Texas in the Permian Basin and also near the coast of Gulf of America. You see a lot of light. And for a long time, I always thought, well, these are like electricity. Those are cities. No, they're not. They're LNG being burned by the US because it's so cheap. LNG in the United States, well, it's not LNG yet, but it's natural gas. So natural gas, it's not liquid yet. But the natural gas is so cheap, and it's one of the main byproducts of the shale oil. Once you start drilling shale, one of the first byproducts is natural gas. It just leaks out because it's costly for the US to bring all of that gas together and pressurize it and make it liquid and then put it into LNG tankers and then send it over to the world. The United States prefers to burn all of that natural gas. And those are the lights that you see on the map in Texas. Most of them on Permian Basin, as I said, and near the coasts of Gulf of America. Those are not cities. Those are natural gas being burnt because the US doesn't have any other solution to collect them at this point. Now, what the market is predicting is that because of the shortage, in production of LNG. There's higher demands in the world because it's actually cheaper and more environmental safe than liquid oil. So gas, liquid natural gas is more dependable. It's cheaper than oil. That's going to skyrocket soon, which means it gives United States and its companies to start harvesting some of that natural gas, which is the byproduct of the shale oil. That's what's going to happen very soon. Within the next few months, you would see right now in Texas, in Gulf of America, American companies are ramping up their production. Within the next 2 or 3 years, they will be able to easily replace most of the energy that is being lost because the Strait of Hormuz is choked. So best opportunity for the United States to expand its market. And who is delivering all of those opportunities to America? I'm asking you, think about it for a second. Is this a manufactured crisis? I'm asking you again. Because it sounds too good to be true. It sounds too good to be true for the US to be enjoying so much energy dominance in the world. If the United States, Canada, and Mexico can reach the goal that the Trump administration is setting for them, which is hitting 30 million barrels a day within 2028, within the short distance, 3 years. 30 million barrels. Right now, they're sitting at 19.5, 20 million barrels a day. With Guyana and Venezuela's oil, 22 million barrels a day. 8 million barrels within the next 3 years, with oil going up as high as $150 to $200 a barrel. And the US is going to benefit from it. The US consumers probably won't, and they're going to feel it. And there will be skyrocketing inflation, but it's going to be great for US economy. It's going to be great for the job market, more jobs here in the United States, well-paying jobs, immediate money, pretty much cash flow, very good cash flow. It's going to be fantastic for the US. This opportunity, who brought this opportunity over to the United States? The regime in Iran. They had one card. They played that card. That was the Strait of Hormuz. And if you go back to the video of how the oil shock, if you can go to the map, Arman John can put up the map for you of how we're going to feel the oil shock around the globe within the next few years. Here's the map. As you can see right here, most of the oil coming out of the Middle East would go to Southeast Asia, They used to go to Southeast Asia. Now the strait is choked. It takes 2.5 months for a tanker that is running as slow as 12 to 15 miles an hour, which is the speed of a bike. Okay, imagine you're sitting on a bike, biking from the Strait of Hormuz all the way to Japan. How long would that take? 3 months, 3.5 months. So a lot of the oil that left that region before February 28th is still inbound. Still, China, Japan, South Korea, and all those countries in between are able to receive the oil from the Middle East. Within the next 2 weeks, those last tankers that left the Middle East before the war would reach Southeast Asia. Within the next 2 or 3 months, 2 or 3 weeks, they reach Europe. If they were bound for United States, that's going to take them another month to hit United States. After that, boom, done, choked off. Adios. That oil is gone. That oil is gone. Japan has no oil. They have to buy it from the United States as they are right now. China, dependent, very much dependent on Iranian oil, Iranian cheap oil. Also, they were like addicted to Iranian cheap oil. That's also gone. The Trump administration took that off the table. If you can put some of the covers that we have on oil tankers. One thing about oil tankers is that because they're very slow moving and they're huge, Arman John, some oil tankers, please. Because they're so huge, they're like 4 football fields long. and they're very, very slow moving. They're great targets. They're great targets, steady targets for pretty much anyone in the world. Pick up a drone or pick up some sort of a fast boat, put some weaponry on it, and start shooting at them. And this is the new norm in the seas in the world, is that it's not only the United States is taking a giant step back, from protecting and patrolling ship lanes. Shipping lanes are no longer being protected by the United States. The United States would escort its own cargo. That's where it's going. And if Europeans are reluctant to open up the Strait of Hormuz, well, they might end up paying $1 a barrel to Iranians. And now Houthis are going to open up another front in Bab el-Mandab because they're going to learn from Iranians that, so they can get $1 from each barrel of oil. Why shouldn't we? They're sitting on one of the choke points that hits Europe very hard, not the United States. I read somewhere nearly like 3% of the whole commerce, United States commerce, goes through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal and Bab el-Mandab. 3%. That's not much. They can easily replace it. Bab el-Mandab is controlled by Yemenis, by Houthis. Remember, the Islamic regime in Iran is running a project that is known as 4H. 4H. Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, Hashd al-Shabi. These are the 4Hs that work as proxy groups for the regime in Iran. And now the next phase of war, once it opens up, once the ceasefire expires, the Houthis and the regime in Iran, their plan is choke off the oil also in Bab el-Mandab and Red Sea. It hits Saudi Arabia the hardest because Saudi Arabia has been quietly pumping oil through pipelines to Red Sea, sending it to Europe. They have been circumventing. Most of their shipping would not go through the Strait of Hormuz for a long time. They've been wary of it, but they're dependent on the Red Sea. They have to be able to export from the Red Sea. That's where they're vulnerable the most. And I think that's going to be the next fault line. The next fault line in this war is going to be the Red Sea and the shipping lanes in the Red Sea, especially ports that export oil from Saudi Arabia all over the world. That's going to be the next fault line. And Houthis are going to enter, trying to blackmail and extort Saudi Arabia as much as they can. Is Saudi Arabia going to retaliate? We will see. Saudi Arabia pounded Yemen for a very long time. They were not able to subdue Yemen. Pounded Yemen for many, many years with airstrikes. Didn't go anywhere. Saudi Arabia also doesn't have a real army. I mean, not a ground force that's reliable. They've never sustained to get involved directly in any military conflict. Without the American support, the only time the Saudis were really engaged in a ground operation was in 1990 in Desert Storm. And they were like the right flank of Americans, or left flank, if I'm not mistaken. Right flank were the Brits and the French. And then the other flank was Saudis, Egyptians, Jordanians, a bunch of other countries all together. That's their only experience. That ground operation took 3 days in total. 3 days of ground operation. Saddam Hussein was kicked out of Kuwait. Saudi Arabia does not have much experience when it comes to ground invasions. They are very vulnerable against extortion and blackmailing of Houthis. We will see how that plays out. United Arab Emirates also, I've noticed within the past 2 weeks, they've been sending their emissaries here in Washington, D.C., and they're talking about what the next steps are going to be. United Arab Emirates is testing the waters to stand up to the regime in Iran. So for a very long time, they were quiet, although they were hit the hardest. United Arab Emirates was hit 2,800 times during this war by Iranian ballistic missiles, and drones. Israel was hit only 1,900 times. So Iran hits Dubai and the United Arab Emirates in general much more than they hit Tel Aviv or Israel. And the reason is that the United Arab Emirates is very vulnerable. They're completely surrounded by Iran, by the waters. They don't have many choices but to rely more on Saudi Arabia, which they don't like. They're skeptical of Saudi Arabia. And they have no other choice but to stand up to Iran. For United Arab Emirates, if they want to accept the status quo, it means that Iran is going to be able to attack its territory at will, and UAE, no response. So why wouldn't Iran do it again to United Arab Emirates? And now it sounds like they have come to their senses. I've seen their delegations, the UAE delegation in Washington, D.C. during the past week, especially talking to, here in Congress, talking to lawmakers, talking to think tankers, feeling the waters, what's the next step going to be? So that's also another prediction. The oil shock in the world will be felt very soon. Lastly, what I want to share with you is the last sip of coffee. This was very essential. This was very essential. It's going to give me the boost to dissect the last part for you. And that is, during the Biden administration, the Senate Judiciary Committee passed a law. Arman John, if you can pull up the Senate Judiciary Committee website. The Senate Judiciary Committee in 2022 passed a law called NOPEC, No to OPEC. If you can pull that one up too, Arman John, NOPEC. And NOPEC basically designates OPEC plus the countries that form this cartel. They were originally consisted of countries like Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela, and Algeria, and many others. Now Iran is essentially out. It's Saudi Arabia's cartel, pretty much. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Oman, a few other countries in the world. So Senate Judiciary Committee passed a legislation that has bipartisan support. Never presented it on the Senate floor. They've been keeping it until this day. What does NOPEC do? NOPEC designates OPEC as a cartel that manipulates the market and as a result goes after it with antitrust laws. What the United States did to huge corporations, oil corporations here in the United States 100 years ago, when Rockefeller was forced to break down his company into 13 different companies. They still made more money, but the decision-making was decentralized. That's what the US government did to its own oil producers 100 years ago. And now they're going to go after the OPEC as a cartel that produces all this oil. Is this an OPEC? Well, the economic war, yes. It takes one move from leader John Thune here in US Congress, the Senate Majority Leader, the Senate leader, basically. Takes one move for him to pick up this legislation and just present it on the Senate floor for voting. OPEC will be done. What it would create is that it would give the President of the United States to control the market. Basically, the US government will enter the market and start manipulating and controlling it. Price control will be in the policies. So the President of the United States can designate a ceiling for gas prices. Say, you know what, gas prices cannot go as high as this in the United States. And that's probably somewhere around, for an oil barrel, it would be around $100. It would be around the same price that we're paying right now. But for export, that's a different story. You want to export, you can export as high as you want. The predictions are that there will be 3-tier market when it comes to oil. One, US domestic market, capped at $100 a barrel. Two, a market for countries that the United States, they have some sort of diplomatic relation with the US and the West. They're not hostile to the United States. Countries that are not hostile to the United States would get a tier two price, probably somewhere around $150 to $200 a barrel. And those countries that don't have a relationship with the US, they have to go and protect their own shipping. And that's going to cost them somewhere around $200 to $250 to $300 a barrel for oil. That is what the US government has in its toolbox. This legislation, NOPEC, that they're going to use whenever they need necessary. And that is the last bit of information that I'm going to present to you on this very live. I want to thank my team again in London for doing this pre-recording for you. I love you. I know that for a lot of you, this is the only way for you to connect to the world, especially for people in Iran. We hope freedom and liberty for people around the world, especially for great people in Iran. I'll be in Los Angeles during this week to cover the Nixon Foundation memorial for President Nixon and the Shah of Iran. I will probably try to come to you live from Orange County. So until then, I say adieu, Javid Shah, Payande Iran, and goodbye.